Let's get this show on the road, please. Chico, sit down. Chico, sit down. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could go around the room, as we always do, and start with introductions. Rich, I'll call on you to start us, please, sir.
Rich DeGrosser, Lakeway Area, MTPO.
Mike Patterson, Ithra Public Transit.
Troy Everett, TPOt OCT.
Patrick Berg, City of Oak Ridge.
Rebecca Stiers, Knoxville Area Transit.
Larry Gann, City of Clinton.
Nancy Welch with Volunteer Assisted Transportation, Knox County CAC.
Blake Starton, Metro Knoxville Airport Authority.
Daryl Smith, Town of Farragut.
Jack Walls, Loudoun County, City of Loudoun.
Jeff Welch, Knox TPO.
Ron Boone, City of Maryville Engineering and Public Works.
Catherine Baldwin, Anderson County.
Chico Messer, Blount County.
Dakota Gentry, City of Alcoa.
I'm Tom Claybo, City of Knoxville.
Mike Conger, TPO staff.
James Temple, Sevier County.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom today?
So far, we have Brian Bartnick and Michelle Christian from the TDOT Region 1.
Okay, welcome. Is there any amendments to the agenda today? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion for approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, moving on to item number 3, Transportation Planning Work Program. Motion to recommend approval of amendments to the Transportation Planning Work Program to the Executive Board. Well,
I'm not sure if I heard correctly before. Was that the approval of the minutes or the agenda, Jack? Did you say the minutes? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I was walked away and I wanted to make sure. Thank you, sir. Transportation Planning Work Program. We have an amendment before you. First part of the amendment is to explicitly state in our Transportation Planning Work Program that we'll begin to update the long-range mobility plan for the urbanized area. We had funding in there, but we did not have some specific language stating that we'll initiate that process. The timeline is that we hope to have a consultant engaged in the next 45 days working through TDOT's on-call selection process and be able to then develop a scope of work and be able to move forward with beginning that work program in cooperation with Rich and Lakeway MPTPO to develop a joint long-range transportation plan for our 2 MPOs. The second item in the work program is to identify that Knoxville Area Transit and the City of Knoxville received a Federal Transit Administration Areas of Persistent Poverty Program grant, and the amendment will add the project and funding in the Transportation Planning Work Program, assuming that they may begin work this year, but most likely it'll be next fiscal year. But we wanted to be in this work program to have the opportunity to begin to move forward on that grant application. So staff recommends approval to the Executive Board.
motion on each of those? Okay. Is there any questions? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A motion, a second.
Second.
Motion, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Moving on to item number 4, FTA Section 5310 Program of Projects. Okay, that'd be Jeff again. Doug's not here today, so Jeff.
I'm going to actually turn it over to Rebecca Stiers. She was part of the committee that reviewed the applications for these fundings, and she can report out on the committee. So, Rebecca?
Yes. So the application review subcommittee, consisting of 5 members, met in late May. The committee included myself with Knoxville Area Transit, Deanna Flincham from Tennessee Vans, Rich DeGrosslier from Lakeway Metropolitan TPO, Doug Burton, and Dory Karen from TPO staff. The TPO received 8 applications in total. The applications were for a mix of operating and capital funding. 7 of the applicants have received funding in the past and are in good standing with TPO. The subcommittee is recommending funding of all 7 applications. The one new applicant is Community Options in Maryville. Community Options applied for 4 non-accessible SUVs, but FTA requires an agency to have a wheelchair-accessible vehicle before we can award non-accessible vehicles. Community Options does not currently have an accessible vehicle, so the subcommittee recommends funding of 1 wheelchair-accessible minivan and 1 SUV. Community Options has agreed to this modification. If you want more information, you can see the attached table in the agenda for a list of agencies, projects, and funding amounts. Back to you, Jeff.
So we are funding 2 years' worth of dollars from the 5310 program, primarily because of the backlog through the pandemic and that. So significant investment here on this program for our demand response types transportation services. So again, staff and the subcommittee recommend approval of this to the executive board.
All right, you've heard the 5310 program of projects. Is there any more questions? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion for approval. Got a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is a regional roadway safety and action plan. Ellen?
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be in front of you again today to update you on the roadway safety plan. This has been a fast, wild ride to get here, but I'm hoping that you will recommend approval of the plan to the executive board so that we can move forward with some applications for funding. So just to recap where we're at, the regional safety plan is following all of the requirements from the USDOT and federal highways to create a plan that will make our region eligible to receive implementation funds through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So we're taking a data-driven approach, a focus on equity, looking at current and recommended policies, making a commitment to reducing fatal and serious injury crashes in our region, and creating a prioritized list of strategies and projects in the plan. And then going forward, we're making a commitment to continuing to work together to implement the plan, measuring progress toward the goal, and sharing that progress in a transparent way. And so we shared the plan out Friday by email when we received it, and hopefully folks had a chance to look at it. We've got a few tweaks to make before it goes to the board, but it's just like wording things. Anyway, so a recap of where we're at. We created 2 sets of high injury networks. This one shows the high injury network for the TPO region outside of the city of Knoxville. It identified just under 2% of the roadway mileage, excluding interstates, but it accounts for nearly 30% of fatal and serious crashes in the region. A separate HIN for the city of Knoxville covers a little more mileage, still only 5% of non-interstate roadways that account for, that's 63%? 63%. I can't tell if it's a 5 or 6 from here. 63% of the serious injury crashes in the region. So again, just those small sections of roadway that see most of the fatal and serious injuries. The plan also identifies a set of 6 crash profiles and then a handful of countermeasures for each of those profiles that we will use to address sort of the most common crash types. So these are the crash profiles we saw most commonly in the city of Knoxville, which involve motor vehicle crashes in commercial areas, crashes involving left turns, and bicycle and pedestrian-related crashes in commercial areas. And then the crash profiles most common in the region outside of Knoxville involved motor vehicle crashes at nighttime on arterials, roadway departure crashes and crashes involving motorcycles. And again, the countermeasures for those. Also had our consultant team create a predictive analysis looking at roadway conditions so that not only are we looking at where fatal and serious crashes have occurred, but where there's a high potential for those type of crashes to occur, so that we're not just reacting, but kind of getting ahead of crashes. And so the project areas we're going to focus on will be a combination of those that have a high predicted crash rate and also a significant history of crashes. So the next steps, we're working with local governments right now to determine the projects that we're hoping to include in a regional application, and we'll make sure those projects are highlighted in the plan so that it all makes sense when we share it with the feds next month. So far, participating local governments include, in a regional application, include Knox County, Maryville, Alcoa, and Oak Ridge. The city of Knoxville is working on a separate application. So, and we're coordinating with them to make sure that those two applications are complementary rather than competing with each other. We have to have the safety action plan in place this month to apply for those funds. And then a subset of the safety action plan for the region will be pulled out to create the Vision Zero plan for the city of Knoxville, which they will host on their website and implement, and also seek funding through SS4A. So I think that's all I've got for you. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Is there any questions? Seeing none.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I didn't ask this question. We talked about this last week, but is it advisable for this regional safety action plan to do like biannual updates, relook at the data, and is what the consultant given us adequate for us as local governments to do that, or could you talk just briefly about that as far as a living, breathing action plan?
Absolutely. So I anticipate that the TPO will continue updating the data as we've been analyzing safety data for years now. So we'll continue to get the crash data probably on an annual basis, do some analysis, update, where we're at, how we're moving toward the goals, where we're seeing, issues. We'll be getting the information from the consultants in terms of how they created the high injury networks, how they created the predictive analysis, so we can continue to run those models and share that information with the local governments to, respond as things change on the ground. So yeah, we'll continue to update the data and share that out with all of you and with the public.
Okay. I'd like to ask for a motion to recommend to the executive board.
Make a motion to recommend.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, fiscal year 2023 to 2026 tip. Craig?
Good morning, everyone. The fiscal year 23-26 tip, I have been advised by Federal Highway, should be approved by June 21st. So while these are amendments that are requested for that new tip are contingent upon that approval, we're hopeful that approval will exist before the executive board. So we'll finally have that going. We've got a couple of one freestanding project and a grouping that we're going to be adding to the tip. So again, 2 projected amendments. One is an existing project for Oak Ridge that was anticipated to be let for construction out of the current tip. Did not quite make that, so we're going to move that over into the new one so that it can be ready to obligate and go to letting. The other is a new grouping for congestion reduction and air quality type projects that we're adding, and that's going to have 2 individual projects that will be included in it with here for the start. Of course, the groupings are always air quality exempt, and then that other is a ITS project, so it is or signal improvements project, which is exempt as well. The total funding that's being added to the tip is just a little over $10 million that you see there, about a little bit past $2.5 million of state carbon reduction program. We've listed that out there. Sometimes when I see CRP, I want to say congestion reduction in my own head, so I put it there for my clarity as well as yours. We're also adding about $7.5 million in CMAQ PM 2.5 which is for particulate matter 2.5 microns and smaller. First here, again, this is the existing Oak Ridge Signal Timing Optimization Phase 2 project. Again, it's carrying over from the previous tip, adding this in for construction. You see the general signals that are involved in that. Again, this was a project that was previously a CMAQ project. We're going to hear more about the CMAQ program from TDOT here and Andrea here in a moment. Previously, again, funded with CMAQ, but in order for them to fiscally manage their program, we're moving this forward with the state carbon reduction program funding. So while the funding is being switched, there is no funding being lost for this project, and it's being programmed for construction this fiscal year. Total project cost on that, about $2.8 million. The next, travel congestion and clean air improvement grouping. This is a new grouping that we're adding to include locally sponsored projects that reduce traffic congestion and improve air quality throughout the TPO planning area. This will be a flexible grouping for a variety of things that we can include in there. Adding the grouping as it starts, it will have 2 projects that you see there, adding just a bit over $7.5 million in fiscal year 2023 funds. These are CMAQ funds in this instance, although this grouping would not be limited to only CMAQ funds. The first is for CAT, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. They've had, this project has had several awards already. There are needs both at the Knoxville Central Station as well as at their super stop, so we're trying to accommodate this. As part of this conversation with TDOT, we had previous balances for the CMAQ 2.5 funds here in the state, which are actually have been determined are only eligible here for the area, and they have asked that we work to obligate a minimum of $7.5 million of carryover funds this fiscal year. So we've reached out to CAT in order to be able to do that, because those can be flexed immediately, and they do have a funding need for this charging infrastructure project. In addition to the $6 million in CMAQ funds that you're seeing there, we're coordinating with them to make a request potentially for some additional vehicle purchase funding to get up to that $7.5 million that TDOT has asked that we do obligate this fiscal year. The next project that we have there, School Congestion Reduction Program. This is the education and outreach project here with obviously a very modest budget, kind of a pilot project if you want to look at it that way, exploring areas. I think the intention is to work with 2 schools here in the region to see what we can do to address some of the congestion challenges around those school sites. Total project cost that you see there, just be adding just a bit over $6 million in federal funds and 7.5 once you include the matching. I'll pause for a moment if there are any questions.
I do have a comment. One way to get rid of the congestion on our schools is to issue a ticket for parking in the lane of traffic at school zones.
Duly noted and considered. Jeff can say what he likes as a short-termer. If there are no
I'm
further...
just curious. What are the schools that you're doing the pilot program?
I don't know that that's been established yet, and Ellen may have a bit more insight into that at this point, but...
Yeah, I expect we'll be working with Bike Walk Knoxville on that, and part of that will be some outreach to schools to see where there's interest. But some of the schools we've heard interest from in the past have been those with like multiple schools on a campus, like Hardin Valley, Farragut, Gibbs, stuff like that, where there's a really serious. So we've already had some relationships there, but it'll be just to see who's, you know, which principals are interested in working on it at the moment.
So if there are no further questions, we do recommend approval of these project amendments. And again, this also is a reaffirmation that the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process is being administered correctly.
All right, well, you've heard that from Craig. I need a motion to approve for the executive board. Need a second?
Second.
Okay, somebody else has got to make a motion a second between these 2 right here. So. Slow down.
I did have one follow-up clarification on my notes. For those of you that are sharp-eyed, you may have noticed that the agenda and your draft page, there is a funding code for the state congestion or carbon reduction program, Y607 in the agenda, and the actual project says Y600. Got an update kind of midstream on that, and I didn't get that translated, so That'll be corrected in the final version, of course.
I think we all caught that. Yeah.
I figured you did.
We didn't want to call you out. All right, we've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Motion saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is TDOT Air Quality Office updates. Andrea Noel with TDOT is here today. Give us some updates. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm Andrea Noel with TDOT. So I manage the Air Quality Office for TDOT. And I just, I'm sure you've heard of the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, also known as the bill. The bill created 12 brand new programs that had never been in existence before. 3 of those new programs came to my office. So one is the NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Act, carbon reduction, not congestion, carbon reduction, and PROTECT, which is our resiliency program. And in the office, we already had existing from 1991, the CMAQ program. So those 4 offices are now housed, or those 4 programs are now housed in the Air Quality Office. So I just wanted to give you, I only have like 2 or 3 slides for each one of the programs. I just wanted to give you a couple quick updates on the NEVI program. I'm sure you've heard of that already. In the state of Tennessee, we call it TEVI, the Tennessee Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. So they allotted $7.5 billion across the nation. $2.5 billion of those are going to competitive grants that Federal Highway will administer. They released the grants, I think in March, and they closed, actually today, I put yesterday on there, but they closed today. But we submitted applications on behalf of the state for about $25 million to come to the state. So one of them was a corridor charging grant that we submitted to do freight along the corridors, because we aren't far enough along in our corridor program to actually compete against ourselves. So we want to look at freight charging along the alternative fuel corridors. And then there was also a community charging grant, which was open to any community if they wanted to apply. MPOs and cities were eligible for that. But we felt that we wanted the state to be more competitive, so we put out a notice and asked communities if they wanted to apply for it. We would apply as the state for all these communities. So we had 24 communities sign on to the project. We applied for another $25 million. If we get the project, which we probably won't know till the end of August or September, there'll still be an opportunity, because those 24 projects won't take up the entire $25 million. So there'll still be an opportunity. I know you guys did not sign on as part of that, but there's still an opportunity to get chargers through that grant if we get the grant. And then $5 billion of that comes to the state as formula program funds. So that's strictly a formula that we have for everything. The state, Tennessee, gets 0.028% of whatever the funding that they put towards it. So we will have $88 million over 5 years to spend on infrastructure. But the feds are pretty prescriptive. So in the beginning, they said, okay, you have to complete the entire alternative fuel corridors. So you can see the lines. Those are what's already been designated. Those were designated back in 2018 or 19 as alternative fuel corridors. And so they said you have to completely build out the corridor before you can spend any of your money anywhere else. And so we have about 1,500 miles of interstate that's been designated, and you have to have a charger every 50 miles along the interstate. They have to be within a mile of the exit. They have to be able to deliver 350 kilowatts of charge at one time, so it's pretty fast, pretty quick. So these are stations that you can charge your car in about 10 to 15 minutes. So it'll be a pull in, go get a Coke, pull back out. As you can see, the red squares are the existing fast charge stations right now. So we only have 10 in the state right now. We're looking to add about another 30. So we have a notice of funding opportunity. We're hoping to get it out by June 30th, so we're working very diligently to get it out in the next 3 weeks, or 2 weeks now. So that'll go out. It'll be open for about 90 days. So sometime in the fall, we'll award those companies. And this will be the first time that we will be contracting with private companies to do this. So It'll be a first for us too. We normally contract with municipalities, but this municipalities are still eligible for this, but the private industry is also eligible for this as well. So I just wanted to give you a little picture of current, the EV state currently. As of March 2023, we had almost 26,000 EVs registered in the state. So I did a little county breakdown for you guys. So Knox County is number 3 in the state for registrations with 4,100. And then you see Blount, Anderson, Sebring, Loudoun County. So in this area, you have about 5,200 registered EVs. I had said that there was only 10 fast charge charging stations. Well, if you look at the existing infrastructure, the 625 is actually a combination between fast charge and level 2. So we have about 625 existing charging stations, and there's lots of other charging. TVA has a charging program out there right now. They're adding about another 50 to 100. TDEC has Fast Charge Tennessee, which is adding about another 50 to 100. We're going to add about another 50 to 100. If we get those 2 grants, that's going to be another, 50 to 100 charging stations. So within the next 3 or 4 years, we'll exceed 1,000 charging stations. So that was my last slide for the electric vehicles. And Jeff, I'm not sure if you want to do questions in between each one of the programs or just wait till the end. It's up to you.
And we can take questions now.
Okay. So are there any EV specific questions that you want to ask before I move on?
I have one. Are the EV quick charge, are they typically at existing gas stations or do you partner with the gas station? How's that work?
Yeah, so good question. So the 10 that are existing are through America, what is it? Of course, now the name escapes me. But yes, most of them are going to be at gas stations or Walmarts or something like that. So those are the, Loves and Travel America and all those places are the ones that have been, Pilot has been a, big wanting to do it too, because they know that there's those ancillary benefits, right? Because you're going to park your car for 10 minutes, you're going to go in and you're going to buy Snickers and Coke and whatever you're going to buy there for 10 minutes, right? So that's where they're planning on making their money. They're not going to make their money off the chargers. So yeah, most of them will be at existing. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah.
Andrea, do we know, are these going to be located like near the current other, like Tesla and some of the other chargers that already have the banks out there, or does it need to be somewhere away from that?
So we've mapped these existing chargers and we can include them, but the Tesla chargers are not included in any of our analysis because they're considered privately owned. So the federal government doesn't consider them a charger. So it could be across the street from a Tesla charger. We wouldn't even know. We haven't even started looking at them because the Tesla chargers are going in so fast that we can't even keep track of them. So right now the United States has about 5 million chargers. No, 5,000 chargers. It's not very many. But there's over 45,000 Tesla chargers already running, and they install about another 1,800 every month. So they're just installing so fast that we can't even keep up with them. So we don't even look. So there could be a Tesla charger, within a couple miles of one of these chargers. So yeah.
So I had a question about the EV registration. Is that including the Tesla vehicle, or is that?
It is. Yep. So the registrations include the Teslas. And one caveat about this data too is there's 2 different types of electric vehicles. There's the battery electric, we call it a BEV, and there's a PHEV, which is the plug-in hybrid. So that number, that 5,200 or even the 26,000 for the state, includes both. It includes the battery only and the plug-in hybrid. So if you took out the the plug-in hybrid, because most of those people aren't going to stop at a fast charge station, there's probably only a couple thousand. So the numbers are quite different right now.
So the website's not going to show any of the private charging?
Correct. Sorry.
Are all the, I don't know what to call them, where you connect, are they all standardized? Are they all standardized?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So yes and no. So Tesla has their own plug. So it's kind of like if you think of an Apple phone versus every other phone, right? Apple has their own charger and every other charger is standard. It's the same exact way here. So Tesla uses something called a NACS, and NACS. I don't even know what it stands for, but that's what their plug is. And the standard plug across the industry is called a CCS, and that's what the federal government is funding right now. And in the beginning, before the feds even started the program, they were asking all the manufacturers of electric vehicles, what type of charger do you want to standardize? They all agreed that it was going to be the CCS. Well, now it's been in the news the last couple of days, and it's creating a whirlwind at the federal level. Ford and GM just signed an agreement with Tesla to now put NACS on their cars. So cars that come out after 24 will have the NACS plug. But here we're funding CCS because they told us that's what they wanted. So at the feds, we're not sure if we're still gonna, in a year, it might look different. We may fund an adapter for the plug to make the NACS a CCS compatible. So you know how like if you have an Apple plug or if you go overseas, you can have an adapter to plug it in so it fits. You can do the same thing on cars because right now Tesla was making an adapter to put on their NACS so that it would be able to fit in a CCS. So there are adapters out there too. So, but yes, there's pretty much two plugs. There's the CCS and the NACS, and now that's
planning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess when the car makers realized that they're putting out a CCS plug and there's only 5,000 chargers, where if you had the NACS plug, you have the access to over 45,000 chargers. So then they're like, oh, wait a minute, let's just go with the 45,000. So that kind of makes sense too, but. So at the federal level, they haven't decided whether we're going to start funding the NACS plugs or not. So more to come on that, but good question. So the second program that I manage is the carbon reduction program. You heard a little bit about it today because we have already funded the Oak Ridge project with the carbon reduction funds. So they put $6.4 billion nationally. Tennessee's portion of that is $139 million. And so we have to submit a plan by November 15th telling them how we plan to spend the funds. Something different about carbon reduction program, which normally the feds don't do. Usually they say, here's your formula funding, and this is how you're going to spend it. Well, with carbon reduction, they actually said, well, we want it spent. We want it to be equitable across the state. So they told us how much we have to spend in each region, in each population category. So in Knoxville, you guys will have $7.9 million over 5 years to spend on carbon reduction projects. So the TMAs, which are the 4 large MPOs, have that kind of responsibility to program the funding that they've been given. But then the smaller MPOs, the state will help them spend it. And then we also have to look to the 50 to 200 category and the 5 to 50 and then the under 5. So we have to spend that amount of funds in each one of those kind of areas. And so we're like, well, how do you do that? How do you spend $9 million in these mid-size towns and stuff? So we decided to put out a MetroQuest survey, which some of you guys took, to tell us like what kind of projects you all wanted us to see. And this mostly was you guys already have your funding, so you can decide however you want how to spend that funding, but we're mostly trying to figure out how we're going to spend it in those smaller communities. So as a state, the total came back survey, people really wanted to see TSMO projects and transit projects. So this is just another way of looking at it. So those were the criteria that you could rank alternative fuels. So these are the things that are eligible for these program funds. So there's no new capacity. You can't fund new capacity with this. It's mostly like the replacement of carbon emissions from tailpipes. So I just figured that everybody's going to want charging stations. So I just assumed that it was going to be number 1, but it wasn't. So I was kind of surprised by that. And then here in Knoxville, your survey results were transit was ranked highest, and then walking and biking facilities. So that just gives you guys an idea of what your community wants. I'm sure you already knew that, but so that's all I had for the carbon reduction program. Not much to say about this right now because you have your own funding. So, but at the state level, we will. Our draft plan will come out in the end of June or July. We're also going to have a website that'll be interactive where you can plug in different numbers and it'll show us like what percentage of projects we've funded and that kind of stuff. So that was it for carbon reduction. I'm not sure if anybody has any carbon reduction questions before I move on to protect. Not quite as exciting as NEVI.
I guess we'll, if we can, we'll share these slides out with everyone if they're on our system, okay?
Yeah, sure. So the PROTECT program, which stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Efficient or Cost-Saving Transportation. So we know it took them a while to figure out that, that acronym. But that's really just our resiliency program. So it's just projects to make our assets more resilient. But you can see that they put aside $8.7 billion. So that's higher than the NEVI, which was 7, and higher than the carbon reduction, which was 6.5. So you can really see where the federal priority is kind of looking by how much money they've set aside for this. And electric charging is, the infrastructure is eligible on evacuation routes. So we could put electric charging on evacuation routes using PROTECT funding. So this is another case where we have to write a plan. So we're writing our resiliency plan, and it is also due in November. So part of the resiliency, the PROTECT program, we have to set aside 2% of our funds just for planning. So we're going to roll out, so instead of just using those 2% of the funds, which is about $2 million, we want to roll out a grant to locals. So we want to have local resiliency grants. And so it's going to be a really easy application, probably about 2 pages. I don't expect them to be highly competitive because we have $2 million, so that's going to fund, at least 20 projects. Transit agencies are eligible, and we'll hire the consultants, and they can identify your transportation assets that might be vulnerable to these kinds of things, and you can do evacuation planning. So anyway, this is just a precursor. We'll make the announcement sometime in August or September. For the grant awards, and then by next spring, you'd have a notice to proceed. So if anybody's interested in a resiliency planning grant, just keep your ears out for the official opening. We will have a webinar as well when the application comes out to just talk about like what kinds of things it could fund. So,
I've got a question about that. Would
Yeah.
a interstate detour program qualify for resiliency planning?
I think it does. Yeah, yeah. So if you wanted to do a plan for that, and so the PROTECT program is also doing national grants, which is, there's one open right now, and it'll close in August, so you kind of missed that, but they do plan on opening that grant every year. So we're hoping that the people that apply for this grant and have the grant finished by next year sometime, you would be more eligible or more competitive for one of those national resiliency grants. So hopefully you could do the planning through this process and then have a plan and be able to apply for that grant and be more competitive. So Mike is making me talk about this, but oh, okay, Craig's making me talk about this. I'm going to blame it on Craig. So the other program that I manage is CMAC, and I only took over CMAC last summer. Not that I'm not going to take the blame for half of this, but so Craig also talked about the STIP being fiscally constrained, and so what that means is that you only can program the amount of funds that you have. And so when I took over the program, I didn't really pay too much attention to CMAC because it had been already existing for years. I assumed that it was doing what it needed to do, and I was pretty busy with NEVI and carbon reduction starting out. And then when all the MPOs submitted their tips to us, we realized that there was more money in the tips than we had available. And we said, okay, well, we have to submit this to the feds, usually in March. And we talked to them about it, and we said, okay, it's not fiscally constrained. We know that. We're going to rectify it. So they said, okay, well, we'll give you a conditional approval. So you can submit the tip. We'll look at it. We'll give you an approval on the condition that you fix it within 90 days. So we said, okay, good. We're good to go. So we did submit it. Well, there was so many things wrong with the STIP that they rejected it. That's the first time that has ever happened. A STIP, a statewide transportation improvement plan, has never been rejected before. it got rejected. A hard no, saying you got to fix it before you submit it again. So part of that, and there was 5 other things. It wasn't just the CMAQ program. There was other things too. I don't remember what they all were, but because I was only concerned with the CMAQ program. And so you can see on that side of the screen, the projects that were submitted, there was $141 million submitted for fiscal year 2023. The number at the bottom of the screen on this side is 24 million. That's how much we had. We had 24 million, 35, 36, 37. That's how much we had available. And that's how much was programmed. So we had about $189 million programmed and only about 120 million available. So there's a lot of things that goes into that number. CMAQ funding expires after 5 years. It doesn't roll over after 5 years. So when the previous people in the program were, expecting projects to end in 5 years, they're still programming. So every year we get about $30 million. So they were still programming $30 million every year, but at the same time, there was some funds that was expiring because the projects were lasting from 7 to 8 years. And so you have funds that are expiring, you have new projects coming on. There's also this process with the state. It's called the August redistribution. It's a federal level where the feds look at your funding that you haven't obligated, and they can either take money back or they can give you more money. So if you've obligated all your money, then you can get portions of the funds from other states that are coming back. So it's this whole big fiscal picture. And so they look at our funds in the spring and they say, you haven't obligated, we're going to flex some of those funds. And it's totally legal. The feds allow 50% of these program funds to be flexed to a different program. So when you have all of those things happening at the same time, when you have projects that are taking longer than expected, you have funds that are expiring, you have funds that are being flexed, you have new projects, that ends up taking its toll. And before you know it, boom, you've got 141 million programmed and you've only got 24 million to spend. So that hit the fan this spring, and I was given 3 weeks to balance the budget because we only had 3 weeks, because if we didn't have the STIP approved at a certain time, we wouldn't make the summer lettings. And then that would put a whole bunch of projects that were not going to get implemented. So we had 3 weeks to take a budget from 189 million down to 129 million. That was a feat. So, and there's also this other thing where is if you change more than 50% of the project, it now becomes an amendment, which means it has to come through the entire process again. And so we only had 3 weeks. We couldn't add an amendment to this time frame. So we said, okay, we have to be able to move funds that are within less than 50%. So we had to move funds. We had to take some of the projects off the books. There was a lot of things that we had to do. If you can imagine, we Mike and Craig were awesome. We sat down with every MPO in person and said, look, this is what we got to do. If we don't get this STIP approved, nobody's projects are going to move, and that's not going to look good for anybody. So so they allowed me the flexibility of being able to move some of the projects out. So we looked at the projects that had been awarded, more than 5 years, and said, okay, well, those funds have been expired, but if they're moving, we want to keep them on, but we might have to move them out. And so we had to balance the projects within the years that made sense. So that's what we did. So some of your projects got moved, but we also said we have a little bit of flexibility here in Knoxville because you guys have PM 2.5 funds, which nobody else in the state can have because they're not eligible for those. So we knew in the back of our minds that we had these PM 2.5 funds. So we said, okay, if we move some things out, we can eventually reprogram the 2.5 funds. We also had the carbon reduction program where we had some funding available too. So we said, okay, if we move some projects out, we know we'll be able to fund them with some carbon reduction stuff, which is what happened with the Oak Ridge project. And so there was all those things going on, but we only had 3 weeks, so we didn't have time to look at the the PM 2.5 funds and decide exactly where they were going to go. We just knew that they were there and we're going to use them now. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So I know that was a lot and I apologize. And I'm sure there's lots of questions. But just know that we did what we had to do. Not one project lost funding. We were able to find the funding somewhere. Yes, projects did get moved out, but you also have to give us some flexibility to say, if you've had a project on the books from 2017 and it went over its 5 years, I mean, technically we could have canceled it, but we didn't cancel $1 of funding. And so, just give us the flexibility of knowing that we had to move some of those projects out in years. And so if you have to wait a few more months until the next fiscal year funding comes in, I apologize. It's what we had to do to keep the projects moving across the state. So I don't know if I should take questions.
Well, I guess thank you for fixing that, and thank you staff for working with TDOT to get that fixed. Catherine, you have something?
You said the Oak Ridge project, is that Edgemore? Edgemore Road? Oh, okay.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sure there's probably more than one Oak Ridge project, but there was the Signal project we knew we could fund through carbon reduction funds because it was an eligible item. So we just took it out of CMAQ and amended it into the carbon reduction. So, yeah.
I guess part of the moral of this story is the longer a project hangs around, the more chances you are of losing the funding. I mean, this scenario is, possibly saved, but it's still pushing it out even. Whether the further it's pushed out, the more expensive it's going to get. And TDOT and TPO are not going to have the dollars out there. So I know there's a lot of players involved in implementing projects and from the state, local, and consultants and stuff. But, again, the bottom line is you got to move those projects. So
Yeah.
we don't want to point any fingers at anyone, but everyone's responsible for getting projects implemented. So.
Right, yeah. We'll definitely have we've implemented a tracking system now to track the projects more closely. We also put something in the STIP, so the feds now required us to have something in the STIP that says you cannot flex any funds if it's going to make the STIP be out of fiscal constraint, which they didn't look at before. If there was funds remaining, they would flex the funds every year. And then that would leave this program short funding. And so now, we had talked to the feds through this whole process and they said, okay, we're putting it in the STIP. It's now a requirement. You cannot flex funds. Even if they're sitting there, they cannot be flexed if it makes the STIP go out of fiscal constraint. So that should help alleviate that a little bit. We do need to move the projects. They need to stay within that 5-year time frame, which I know a lot of that is out of everybody's hands, but we need to look at it more closely to continue to have the funding that we have. So,
A couple of comments just for our local partners clarifying. We'll be meeting with each of you. You've all kind of seen what the impacts of the revised projects coming forward are. Phases generally were moved 1 to 2 years, potentially in some instances. If a project phase is moving forward along that schedule, and I urge you to continue to push your projects along for the reasons that Jeff mentioned, as that project gets ready to need a notice to proceed, and I know Tom, the city has one right now for a project for the design phase that's ready to go, we'll then, have that conversation and meet with Andrea. We're going to talk to her to say, okay, what types of flexibility, whether that's PM 2.5 or carbon reduction, so that we can then modify that current delayed project phases to pull something forward to get funding in whatever given fiscal year it will be, whether it's here as we close out 23 or something that has funding in 25 and something that moves in November. Let's see what we can do to move funding into fiscal 24. So that's just a question or a clarification of kind of where we are going forward on that.
no, that's good. That's all I have, unless anybody has any other
Any questions from anyone?
No CMAQ call for a while.
Oh, yeah. I forgot one of my bullets. And so we have programmed all of the funding for the next 5 years. So we only get our projections out 5 years. So we only know what we're getting until 2026. we've programmed that down to almost the thousands. So in this, for 2023, I have like $7,000 left, which doesn't fund anything. In 2024, I have like 60,000 left in CMAQ, then 50,000. So the numbers are really, really small. So even overages on the projects, I mean, we've been getting requests for double and triple what the original awards were, because the projects, once you put them out to bid, are just going way over cost estimates. And so in the past, we've been able to say, okay, well, this project's really important. We want it to move. We're going to take some of that funding and put it on your project just to move it and get it closed out. We're not really able to do that right now because we have no dollars left in the program. Very, very little dollars. So we won't be able to cover overages. I mean, we're trying to move stuff around when we have deobligations, which doesn't happen very often, thankfully. We were able to take that money and kind of do some overages there. Right now I have a list of overages of about $6,000 just for the month of June that I've put in a request to the commission and said, please, can you find $6 million. I keep forgetting my zeros there. $6 million that I've put in a request asking them to find it from somewhere to give it back to us so we can obligate those just this summer. So I would still say send your overages, but just don't expect that it's going to be a yes. It's going to be we're going to try. We're going to either put in a request for extra funds. We're going to see if we can fund it through carbon reduction, something else that's eligible. We will try. We'll do everything we can to get these projects funded, because the goal is to get these projects obligated and moved, right? So we will try, but there's just no funding there. And so
will scope reduction be allowed where it hasn't in the past on those overages? If you're in the beginning of a project, will scope reduction, reducing the scope, be permissible, or is that on some of these cost overages if you're just in the beginning phase of your project?
yeah, so it's less likely. It's less like if you're in the beginning phases and it's going to cost, it's less likely to move. If you're in the construction phase and you've already been given the notice to proceed, we're going to try harder to get that funding because we want the construction phase to move out. If you're still in PE and you're already going over, that means you're probably going to go over and over and over at every phase, and so we're less likely to fund something like that. So as far as the calls like they used to be in the past, where almost every year you could count on a call to go out for a grant and you guys would apply for the grants and the funds, that's not going to happen anymore. I don't want to say forever because that's not a word, but it will not happen at least until the 2027 funds. And even then, I'm not sure if we're going to do it that same way. It might be projects that are on the list that you guys already decided, and then we say, okay, that's eligible for CMAQ funds. We might do something like that. But this whole grant process of going out for a grant, and it takes a year, then you got to get the commissioner's signature, and then you've got to get them go through the process of initiating the package. And so you've already killed, almost 2 years right there in the front of that. So we're going to have a strategic plan for CMAQ written before 2026, so that we'll know what the most efficient way is to actually obligate these funds. But we hope that CMAQ and carbon reduction will be kind of like sister programs because they fund very similar types of projects. So we're hoping to look at carbon reduction and CMAQ as a state and say which projects, are the priority projects, and then where are they? And if they're in a CMAQ area, then we could just put CMAQ funding there, and if they're in a carbon reduction. So that's kind of how we're hoping to run the CMAQ and carbon reduction together. But CMAQ is not going to look like what it used to look like. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? All right, comment?
Andrea, you're just so nice in presenting this, so we'll refrain from throwing any darts at you all. But appreciate all the effort that you guys have done in pulling this together. But it is, in essence, a game changer for the CMAQ program, the way it's been run for the last basically 20 years. So it's all bets are off now. It's just like next 5 years, you got to just do with the existing projects. So
right, yeah,
and maybe consider your cost overruns more critically, that you may have to cover those cost overruns with your own funding, because obviously our TPO is fiscally constrained when it comes with our LSTPG funds that we had in the past some flexibility, and we have very little flexibility there in any cost overruns that we have. And our PM 2.5 is not a whole lot of money to cover over this time period. So, but thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to jump in and borrow a moment as well. Cost overruns. This is another opportunity for me to remind everyone, when you have cost overruns, please send them to the TPO in addition to TDOT, specifically me, if you're intending to request additional funds or have additional obligations. That is all I have.
Duly noted, sir. Thank you. Let's see, item number 8, TDOT, fiscal year 2024 through 2026, 3-year program update. We've got someone.
Good morning. My name is Christy Brown. I'm with the Region 1 Project Development Office with TDOT out there on Strawberry Plains. And I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about the 3-year plan that was released earlier this year. And then I'm going to also talk about the TMA, the Transportation Modernization Act, that was also signed. So I'm going to start with the 3-year plan. I do want to kind of remind everybody that a couple years ago, TDOT changed the way we do the 3-year plan. Historically, we asked you guys to rank projects by phase, whether PE, right-of-way, or construction. Starting 2 years ago, I think it was with the 2025 plan, we asked you guys just to rank the project. So once a project shows up in the 3-year plan, you guys will no longer be asked to rank that project. Our goal is that once a project is identified in the 3-year plan, it goes to construction around 5 years, possibly 7 years from the year it shows up. So if it shows up in year 3, 5 to 7 years after that, the project will go to construction. We're targeting 5 years. There are some projects that are larger with a more complex environmental document or require more right-of-way acquisition, so that's why we could say it could be up to 7 years. So I just want to remind everybody about that change. So the list on the screen is the projects that you guys submitted last fall. I think you ranked 23 projects and submitted those to us. So the 2024-2026 Comprehensive Multimodal Program was released this April. The list shown now is 11 projects that are in Region 1 that was included in this plan. There were 2 new projects that moved into year 3. You can see those. Those are outside of the TPO area, but it's the Cott County I-40, the Hartford Welcome Center, and then the Hawkins State Route 31 reconstruction project. So this list, and I apologize, it's kind of hard to read, but I'll kind of talk through it. This is a list of 6 projects that was included in either this year's 3-year plan or last year's 3-year plan. You can see 3 of those have the word committed on them. I do want to kind of explain what that means. TDOT is committed to delivering every project, but when we changed the way we handle the 3-year plan, we kind of redefined committed. And as I mentioned, once a project is included in the 3-year plan, you no longer have to rank that project. So that project is committed. So projects that are defined as committed, starting at the top, is the Anderson. We have an Anderson State Route 9 project. It's a bicycle and pedestrian facility project. It was actually in last year's 3-year plan for construction in 23. We are still coordinating with the railroad, the city of Clinton, and Aspire Park on that project. So that project has kind of not moved forward to construction yet. The second project on the list is the Anderson State Route 170 project from Mountain Lake Road to Clinton Highway. That project remained in this year's year 2 in the 3-year plan. It was in last year's year 2 as well. It did not move forward because we are currently coordinating with TVA. TVA is a big stakeholder on that project. We've had a couple meetings with them. We need to get their buy-in on the concept, how we're going to construct the bridge. So we are targeting FY '25 to go to the right-of-way phase on that section of State Route 170. The third project on the list is, I'm gonna have to look at my list, I can't read that. And again, I apologize for the, the Emory Road. Oh, the ITS expansion. Thank you.
Oops. Is that better? No.
That's, if I know what it is, I can speak on it.
Well, at least if folks can see it. Okay.
Okay.
A little better?
Yeah. So the third project is the ITS expansion along I-140. That one is currently in the August letting, as well as the project below that, which is the Blount County State Route 115 relocated Alcoa Highway section. That's phase 1. Both of those are currently, plans have been turned in for the August letting. The next project is the Knox County interchange, I-75 interchange at 131, the Emory Road interchange. That remained in year 2 as well for construction. We are in the right-of-way phase on that project, but all the right-of-way acquisition is from corporations, so that's taking us a little bit longer than what we originally anticipated, so that's why it remained in year 2. And then the last project listed is the Knox County State Route 115 Alcoa Highway Cherokee Trail project. We just awarded that project to Blaylock for a price tag of $186 million. So it has a hefty price tag, but we do have a pre-con scheduled for next Friday, so we're getting ready to get that project moving. So I know that was pretty fast, but that was really the updates on the 3-year plan. You guys have any questions about that before I move on? No. Okay, get back to you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So now I want to talk just briefly about the Transportation Modernization Act that was signed by Governor Lee in April. The department's very excited about it, and I think you guys are too. It really emphasizes 3 different things you can see on the screen. The P3s, as we call them, the public-private partnerships, and that includes the construction or choice lanes that can be constructed. That'll help both rural and urban areas. It also expands alternative delivery for us. That's something kind of new to Region 1. We are currently working on our first one, but those typically, we can deliver faster and cheaper because we get the contractor on board early on in the development phase. It also creates some parity with EVs. I know we've talked about that before, about with some registration fees and stuff like that, and there's another slide. So I do have a little video. Let me see if I can get this to play. Is it? Okay. I think it just, okay.
We are fortunate to live in a state with so much going for us, a direct result of our sound economic policies, high quality of life, and ranking as one of the lowest taxed states in the country. While this yields economic opportunity, it also presents traffic congestion challenges in urban areas. Sitting in traffic isn't how any of us want to spend our time. Building choice lanes in congested urban areas would help reduce traffic congestion, provide more reliable trip times, and help you get to where you need to be on time. You can make it home for dinner, to a soccer game, a doctor's appointment, or to work. Service vehicles can make that one extra house call to bring in more business, and emergency vehicles get to emergencies faster. It's their choice to drive on these additional roads. Choice lanes have been successful across the country. States like Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia all have built new choice lanes to relieve congestion during peak travel times. These are newly constructed lanes designed, built, financed, operated, and maintained by the private sector through public-private partnerships. Partnering with the private sector to help relieve urban congestion is part of Governor Lee's Build With Us proposal, which frees up funds to enhance transportation infrastructure in rural communities. And let's be clear, despite what you might be hearing, choice lanes are not the same as a toll road. A toll road, which is not something TDOT is proposing, requires all drivers using the road to pay a fee to get from point A to point B. With choice lanes, drivers can choose to use the new choice lanes or continue to utilize the existing general purpose lanes where a user fee is never charged. The user fees are based on driver demand, helping to ensure 50 miles per hour travel speeds even during peak periods. And an added bonus is public transit partners can also choose to use the choice lanes for more predictable schedules. A robust transportation network that includes choice lanes provides more balance to quality of life due to less time spent in traffic, improves traffic conditions for motorists using the general purpose lanes as there are fewer vehicles utilizing them, frees up funds to invest in infrastructure in rural communities, impacts regional economic prosperity positively, offers enhanced transit options as transit buses can use the lanes, and improves air quality due to less idling as a result of reduced traffic congestion. We at TDOT are excited at the prospect of bringing choice lanes to some of the most congested areas in Tennessee. Our goal is to ensure Tennesseans have a safe, reliable, modernized infrastructure system for generations to come. And we're asking you to build with us.
I need help. For some reason it pops up in a separate. I didn't see it on there. Yeah. Oh, you gotta close it up there. Okay. So you should be good to go. All right. Another thing I wanted to mention that this year with the budget, as part of the governor's budget, the department did receive $3.3 billion as a general fund transfer. $3 billion is going to be split into $750 million for each region across the state. Currently, we're working through the project identification phase for projects, and then $300 million is for the state aid program, and we'll go to the counties. You can kind of see a timeline along the bottom of the screen. The 3-year plan was approved in April, and through the remainder of the year, we're going to develop an investment strategy for the Transportation Modernization Fund. Implementing, as I mentioned, Governor Lee signed it on April 17th, 2023. TDOT will provide a project status report prior to January 1 of 2023, and every January 1 after that. By July 1st, 2024, and every July 1st thereafter, TDOT will submit a report to finance chairs and transportation chairs on all activity. The bottom timeline talks about the implementation of EVs and hybrid fees. You can see starting January 1, 2024, it kind of stays the same till January 1, 2027, and then it jumps up. There is indexing included for those fees. That was something that we were unable to do with the gas tax, so those fees will be indexed. Priorities is some program definition by December 2023 to develop choice line implementation plan and strategy, an appointment strategy for the Transportation Modernization Board. That's going to begin about October the 1st of this year. And then, of course, we want to continue to work with the MPOs and the RPOs and the stakeholders as well. So we do have a website, the Build With Us website. I don't know if you guys have seen this QR code, but there's a lot of good information on there. So that kind of wraps that up. Do I have any questions?
Just Chrissy, I failed to ask this question before, but the two projects that were in last year's budget for I-40 Watt interchange and Campbell Station Road interchange, they're separate from this Modernization Act, and they are also right now in their development stage, I guess, so they'll be added to the STIP or the TIP when they're ready to be launched. I assume that is the case with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're separate since that was last year's general fund, and they are starting to move forward. I think we're getting ready to start survey. Any other questions? I think we have, oh, you're next, okay.
Thank you, Chrissy. Item number 9, excuse me.
Number 9.
Update adjusted urban growth, urbanized area and metropolitan planning area boundaries.
Yeah, thank you. This is just a quick update on the process to delineate our new metropolitan planning area boundaries, which comes about with each decennial census, where the Census Bureau defines the urban area that we must include in the planning area as the bare minimum, and then go out from there. So I talked about this in February and just wanted to come back and give you a quick update. And this first part here is just a quick refresher of where the urban area has changed over the last 3 decennial censuses, or 4, I guess, 30-year period. Back in 1990, you can see that pink area there. We were just in Knox and Blount counties for the Knoxville urban area. With 2000, we expanded into Lenoir City there in Loudoun County, and also Seymour. I don't have a pointer here that works, but so we added jurisdictions with the 2000 metropolitan planning area that we had to include with those jurisdictions. And then 2010, we expanded further in Loudoun County. We picked up City of Loudoun, Tellico Village, further down in Seymour. And then the big one there was up in Anderson County for the first time, connecting with the City of Oak Ridge and City of Clinton. So we added those jurisdictions to the TPO at that point in time. The new thing with 2020 is Census Bureau changed their criteria quite a bit about how they determine what's urbanized and how you can jump across to pick up other areas that are densely populated. So what happened there is we actually shrunk. This orange area is smaller, and you can see the 2 areas I've circled there. We lost Tellico Village and Seymour because they're disconnected, and we couldn't make that connection any longer. So we're responding to that with the next steps here. The first thing we do is delineate what we call the adjusted urbanized area, or smooth urban area. So you can see how jaggedy and there's disconnected pieces. We want to kind of circle that in, make it more a smooth boundary. We do this in conjunction with TDOT, and it's subject to federal highway approval. And then from that, we have to include that area as a minimum in that new metropolitan planning area that I mentioned. So it must include all that area plus what we anticipate to be urbanized within the next 20 years. So you can see the dark blue line is our current metropolitan planning area. It pretty much includes all of that new 2020 area, except we did expand a little bit up there in the city of Norris, a little bit around Clinton area. So we'll have to take that in as new area to the planning area, but we have to decide now what we do with Tellico Village and Seymour. So we've been talking to TDOT about that, because as a small area, they are technically eligible to receive their own allocation of that federal STBG funding, but they're unique, of course, that they don't have a local, they're not an incorporated city with a local government that can contract with TDOT to receive those funds. So there's a potential there that maybe if they stay in the metropolitan planning area, that funding comes to the TPO, and it may or may not be restricted to be only spent within that geography or surrounding, because Seymour goes well beyond what that small area that's actually in the urban area is. So we're talking to TDOT about that and awaiting official guidance. So stay tuned for further on that. And then from that, we update our functional classification, determines the urban-rural, where that adjusted urban area boundary lies. And with that, we take that opportunity to reassess all the roadways. If you see other roads that need to be changed in functional class or added to the system, which can make them eligible for federal aid funding through that process. So we don't have a firm schedule. We know we're shooting for a deadline of December 29th of this year, and that's for like a statewide process that TDOT's going to coordinate. So they're working on guidance and a specific process for that. It should be coming out any day now, I guess, and so we'll have more information as we move forward. And in the meantime, I would like to come out to meet with jurisdictions and start talking about our initial boundary assumptions, what we're looking at, and talk to you about where you're seeing development patterns occur. Do we need to pull back some of that boundary or maybe expand it where there's some new development occurring, like in Blount County, on that periphery down there? Or do we want to take it to Townsend or somewhere in that area? There's really not many restrictions on how far we want to expand the boundary. Again, we have to keep it at that minimum area, but we can go much further and to decide where that makes sense, because the drawback for taking it further is that we get no additional funding. Our funding is based on only the population that's in the census designated urban area. So there's a lot of considerations and more discussion to occur on this, but that's kind of where we're at right now. If there are any questions, I can answer those. Or
Mike, do you want us to reach out to you, or will you be reaching out to the individual jurisdictions to do that?
Right. I was planning to reach out to you all, and I think it would make sense, like, to get the folks all together in the same county. Like for Blount County, get the Blount County, City of Alcoa, Maryville together, if you guys think that makes sense, and Loudoun County similar. So that's kind of my thinking on that over the next few weeks here. I do have some vacation in July that'll be out for a little while, but I'm hoping to get the guidance from TPOt as well, because there may be something in there that changes the process or what the timeline I'm thinking of. So hopefully we'll get that, and then I'll be in touch with you all to set those up.
Thank you, Mike. Is that all?
Yeah, we do have next on the, I'm going to pull up for Randy here. I think we do have an update from TPOt about resurfacing.
Randy, it's your turn. Come on down.
Is that up there? Yeah.
You're the next contestant.
Do what?
You're the next contestant.
Next contestant. What's the prize?
I don't know.
Thank you. I'm Randy Bustler. I'm the Region 1 Pavement Management Coordinator for TPOt. And what I'm here today, I was just going to give you a little bit of an update on where we stand in 2023. It's been a little late season this year. We had a few issues with our contracts with Norfolk Southern this year, which pushed a lot of our work out. And so we've got several projects that are we've got a few still to be let, and even more though, we've still got many that haven't started yet. So I'm going to go over our 23, and then I'm going to give you a preview of what we've got for 24 for your all's area. So as you see there, for our first project up there, State Route 95 in Oak Ridge Turnpike. That's from Illinois Avenue to State Route 61. That project was just let a couple of weeks ago, and it is going to be awarded. So I expect construction to begin on that one sometime within the next couple of months. So also we've got State Route 33 in Blount County. We'll slide this over a minute so make sure I don't mess the county up. Whoop. Me and pads don't get along too good here. Oh. That is. Well, go ahead. I'll let you all.
Random
apps. Sorry about that.
Random apps popping up on us. Sheesh.
That one's been stubborn. Thank you.
Okay, try to slide to the left.
I'm sliding it to the left. Get it over to the county. It's okay. That'll work.
Do you want it a little bigger?
No, that's fine. Thank you. The next one on the list there is in Blount County. It's from the Loudoun County line. It's on State Route 33. It goes to Calderwood Highway there at State Route 115. We've got a couple other projects there in Blount. These were just recently let. State Route 335 from 334 to 33. We did exclude that little section we did with the Alcoa Highway relocation. And also State Route 162 there, which is, I guess, the Pellissippi extension there past I-140. We've got that one going from, and it says from State Route, near State Route 115, Alcoa Highway, with the new, with the project that's to be let in August. There is a portion of that that's actually going to affect that one, so we're going to exclude that area from the resurfacing project. So it'll probably start near Kuzik and go to State Route 33. I didn't have it on the list because I didn't post the interstate work, but I-140 is also being resurfaced in Blount and Knox County from basically the River Bridge to Alcoa Highway. So we're getting that one done this year. Next one on the list, Knox County, State Route 131 level road. It goes from State Route 1 to near State Route 162. We've also, I think we do have a few upgrades that we've discussed, a few safety upgrades and a few pedestrian upgrades in that one as well. Knox County, State Route 61. This one's a rural one. It's combined with the Union County and Granger County section. Anderson County, State Route 9. This one's from Longmire Road to Linwood Street. This goes through downtown Clinton. For those that might not know where that one would be. Page down a little. And we've also got State Route 330 in Anderson. That one is in Oliver Springs from the Roane County line to State Route 116. For 24, got a section of State Route 73. This is US 321. It's from near Tuckaleechee Pike to near the bridge over Hess Creek. So this one's approaching Maryville city limits. We've also got Knox County State Route 33 with North Broadway from Central Street to Mineral Springs Avenue. Anderson County 62, that's Illinois Avenue from State Route 61 to near Union Valley Road. Knox County, we've got State Route 1, and it'll be from, it's out here on Hall of Fame Drive in East Magnolia. This is basically from the Women's Hall of Fame to the tie where we have the split for 11E and 11W. Blount County, that section of State Route 115, that is the Dragon. We're going to be resurfacing that one next year. Also, we have State Route 131 on East Emory Road. There from near Gill Road to Hollycrest Lane. That's out near I-75 interchange. And also in Knox County, we're doing State Route 33 Maryville Pike from the Blount County line to State Route 71. Any questions?
Jeff's leaving here to go buy a motorcycle to drive on that new pavement on the Dragons.
Oh, I did mention, of course, that one state. There is also for 24 for interstates and in the area here, we'll be doing I-75 from the Knox County line to State Route 61 next year, as well as we've got a section in Loudoun County from the Monroe County line to the Tennessee River Bridge. So those are the two interstate projects that'll be in the area next year.
I didn't need to hear that. But thank you.
Randy,
we're
this
planning
list
for traffic, right?
This list is available online, right?
It will be. It is not. It will be. It is not yet. We're changing the way we're doing our resurfacing program right now a little bit with some of the changes. I know many of y'all have heard within TPOt. We're taking a harder look at the way we develop our 3-year plans. And so as of right now, these lists are not available at this point, but they will be.
Our elected officials will often ask us what is going to be resurfaced, and then we pick up the phone and call you because we're not sure. But
Yeah, and feel free, contact me anytime. I'm always available to talk to you about it.
So Randy, is this something we could share with the tech committee, what you presented here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, you all, this has all been approved.
Okay.
So we're good to go.
You sent a letter.
Thank you, Randy.
You sent letters out.
I think so.
Typically, every year, our office sends out letters to the elected officials and make sure that they are aware of those as well. Sounds like we're still going to do that again.
Oh, one thing I failed to mention. This past year, we started a pilot program with our curb ramp program, where our curb ramps have been included in our resurfacing in the past. And that was a federal mandate that we had to upgrade our curb ramps as we did our paving. But last year, we started a pilot program where we actually were able to let separate contracts with our resurfacing list to do all those upgrades prior to resurfacing this year. And we've got another contract. The multimodal division has now taken that over. And as of right now, I'm not 100% sure when those projects will be let, but there will be curb ramp contracts. There will be a curb ramp contract let next year for any of our resurfacing that has curb ramps.
Updates from FHWA, Jeff?
No FHWA online, so I'll do quickly other business, Mr. Chair. We have our executive board meetings Wednesday, June 28th, and then our tech committee is July 11th. Just a couple of other updates. With the deficit reduction or debt ceiling negotiations that what occurred, we found out like the day after the thing was signed, or not signed, but the deal was cut, that there was potential to lose some of our CARISA funds that we got through the pandemic and all that stuff. So we found out like at 3:30 from TDOT that we potentially lose about $1.2 million. And Craig, working with Kat, we were able to flex that $1.2 million and not lose that. So I want to give kudos to Kat and Craig and then TDOT to get it through TDOT's offices and programming and to FHWA, and they had everything signed and the money was transferred by, 10 o'clock Friday morning, I think it was. So in about 18 hours, we're able to save $1.2 million for our region, not have to, use up some of our other funding or lose the project whatsoever. So again, thanks to Kat and Craig.
I'm just all over here with random comments on that. So we did have two projects that had CRISA money that went away. Your money has been replaced with LSTBG money that was previously over at CAT. So that may impact, and they're both City of Knoxville projects, First Creek Greenway and Sevier Avenue. We may have contract changes that we'll need to tweak to get that out. So just a final clarification on that. So.
Thanks for clarifying that. Second thing I did, for those folks that have been working with TDOT for many, many years, Paul Deggs recently retired from TDOT as of May 31st. So he's, after distinguished 30 plus years of service, he is officially retired program. And also just an update on, I will be retiring at the end of August. We have tried to hire someone earlier this spring, was unsuccessful in that regard. We have engaged a national executive search firm to assist us in that manner. We've just started that process to fill the position, excuse me, to begin that executive search. And we hope to have someone maybe on board, maybe in October, November timeframe. There's just a lot of positions vacant out there. There's not a lot of people applying for jobs out there. Nashville now is looking for a new MPO, TPO coordinator also. So the competition's tough, and as you all know, trying to fill positions is hard for everyone. But I will have 2 more months left, and then I'll be on the retirement circuit.
Kidnapping you and not letting you go. That would happen.
Yeah, August 23. Sorry.
24,
Sorry.
25. Let's make it 25.
But we'll keep you in the loop on that, how it's going, and we'll be engaging the technical committee and some of the executive board members on as we move through the executive process, or the search process, so.
Okay. Is there any public comment today? Seeing none, ask for a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.